Drum roll, please. And we're live. What's going on, D-Bags? Hope you guys are doing well. We're back here again with another episode of the dtalks podcast. I'm your host, Darren, Rita. Feel free to connect with me. Any of the links down below. And if you're new here and you enjoy music, podcasts, comedy, hooping videos, any of that good stuff, do consider subscribing because it helps us reach more people and share conversations like this one and our other episodes with a larger audience. So consider doing that if you're interested in any of that stuff. Now, before I can get into the show today and introduce you guys to my guest this week, I got to talk to you guys a little bit about car insurance. These days, it seems as if we're able to do more and more from home. So while you're at home, why are you saving money on your car insurance? Your hometown agency, Kenosha Auto Insurance, has specialized for years in simple, hassle-free car insurance using the latest and touch-free technology to help you and your family get the best rates. So what are you waiting for? Give them a call today at 262-448-4141. That's 262-448-4141. The website's on the screen right now. It's kenoshains.com. It's also linked down below. One last time, that's 262-448-4141. Give them a call. Tell them Rita dtalks sent you. The worst that could happen is you will get the best rates. Now, with all that good stuff out of the way, I am pumped to introduce you guys to my guest this week and get to sit down and kick it with him. He's a dancer, a teacher, mixologist, newly social media manager of sorts. Let's give a wet dtalks welcome to Evan. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm well.
I'm happy to have you here. I was we've talked maybe a year and some change ago about getting you on, and
Who
then
knows anymore? What is time?
I don't remember anything that happened last year.
Not at all.
You know, time flies, but we got you here. You're here in the building. We were talking before we went live about dance. Obviously, you spent a lot of time as a teacher. Obviously, spent a lot of time in the craft of dance. We're gonna be talking dance today a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how tall?
I'm 6'3".
Was there a push for you to play sports?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
From family members, maybe friends were like, dude.
And I did for a little bit.
What sports do you play?
So I tried football in 8th grade.
Oh man.
Yep. In 8th grade, I tried football. I was like, okay, this is going to be the year. I'm going to give it a go. I went to 2 practices.
Yeah.
And decided it was not for me. And I was so blessed because my mom was not the type to be like, well, you signed up. You have to like do it the full year. And I was like, okay, well, there's got to be some kind of opt out here now, right?
Yeah.
2 days in, I was like, Mom, this isn't for me. It's not for me, not cutting it. Okay.
I couldn't see
we're
you
not
playing
do
football.
It was awful.
You don't strike me as you're a very relaxed, chill guy.
Yeah, definitely not the like, let's kill him and
rip people's heads off.
Right,
it's a scary sport to begin with. So football, what was your first, you're practicing, are you in pads right away, or was it you're just kind of like, I don't even want to get to that point?
No, not even pads. Didn't even want to get to that point. Like, I think we had pad pickup, and so we get all this gear, and I'm like already feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, this is a lot. Yeah. There's a lot going into this right now.
And so you're like, screw that. I'm doing dance.
Yep.
How long after were you doing dance already?
So yeah, I had already been dancing. I've been dancing now since I was 8. So yeah, that's a long time. I can't math anymore.
That's crazy. But, what did you start where do you start with dance? Is it a lot of people? I know my sister was in ballet and stuff like that. Is that where you start usually in dance, and then you kind of progress into other genres or so?
It really depends. So I've got some friends who started late for dance in high school, and they started with contemporary and ballet. And then myself, I started right away in tap. And the reason why we started is because actually my whole family, extended family, were all enrolled in this dance studio in Janesville. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, shout out Susan School of Dance, everybody. If you're an OG.
Yeah, in the 608.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yep.
So you come from a family of dancers.
I would love to say it that way, but it's not. That's like painting another picture, I feel like.
They've just all danced before.
A lot of people in the family have danced before, yeah.
Okay.
And so some of it stuck with some people. Other people, it didn't really stick as much. But yeah, so I started when I was 8, Susan School of Dance, tap dancing. My first song that I ever danced to was the Kangaroo Hop.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I never heard that.
No.
Is it a bop?
Yeah.
It sounds like it sounds like that's Billboard, top 100
The
shit
Kangaroo
right
Hop.
Yeah.
Look it up. You'll love it.
Kangaroo Hop. I'm going to have to check that out after
Summer
this.
2022 banger.
Damn. Okay. So that's your first dance, and you still remember that. That's crazy.
That was the first one. I feel like you don't forget some of those things.
Yeah.
A weird thing about dance is you think about sports and the audience, the people who are going, they go to all these games, and you have however many games in a season. Well, in dance, you usually only have one big performance.
Yeah.
And so you're working on this all year long. And then at the end, you perform for the audience and everybody loves it and they give you flowers and stuff and then it's done.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just have that like one big memory, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And there's got to be a little bit of like anxiety, pressure kind of building up where it's like, oh, I'm in this class for 6, 7, 8 months and it's like I get to show my family and everybody who cares about me what I've been working on one time.
Yep.
Hopefully it goes well, like that's got to be a little nerve-wracking.
That definitely. That's that's like a little fact about me is like I do not like performing.
What?
Yeah, I don't.
Really?
And it's not that I don't like it. There are aspects of it that I love.
Yeah.
But it's full of anxiety. Like when you're waiting behind the wings, your heart starts going. There comes to be like a certain point where I don't know if it's like your mind shuts all that down or if it's your body just like tolerance is finally reached for anxiety. And then you're just like on the stage and you're like, whatever, I'm doing it. Like we're out here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get super anxious before like any performances. And it takes quite a while to get up to that point where I'm like, all right, we're doing it.
Yeah,
it's usually like 5 seconds before I actually hit the stage.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Man. And I'm sure you're obviously well prepared. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. So when you do perform, I'm sure like what you're doing. What do you think it is that's like creeping into your mind and just freaking you out?
I don't know what it is. One thing that's helped me kind of to reframe it is that those same feelings that you get are actually the equivalent to excitement. And so reframing like the idea of anxiety being excitement has definitely helped.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make any of those feelings less big,
That's true.
So you still have like all these big feelings going. Yeah. I can't really pinpoint what it is exactly about it. Maybe it's like that fear of messing up, or maybe it's that there's like a lot of unknown. Like once you get on the stage, what's going to happen? Well,
it is like a leap of faith.
You've been training,
and
so you like anticipate what's going to happen, but you never really know.
Yeah. I mean, a light could go out, the music could stop playing, somebody trips and falls, whatever, and it's like.
And usually it's that. Usually it's like I'm thinking I'm gonna just like fall flat on my face and like eat it on stage.
Damn. Yeah. No, I've had those similar thoughts like that before. I mean, I feel like when you're getting ready to perform, at least for myself, it was quickly, and I feel like I'm a very anxious person, overthink a lot of things. But when it came to the performance, it's usually just like, I've already done all the work. Like if it goes wrong, it's going to go wrong. So I'd usually just like get amped up as opposed to like super nervous. Yeah. But I definitely see, and I agree with your sentiment of like, it's the same feelings. They're just as big. You just got to try to flip it to be excited as opposed to anxious. So that makes a lot of sense. When it comes to dancing lessons in general, how do they differ from like, because did you play other sports?
Yep. So then I did play basketball.
Okay.
And that one I stuck through. I was like, okay, this is tolerable. This is doable. Yeah. Like we're not in the heat. I'm not dying in August trying to practice.
Yeah, it's a controlled environment. Nice
100%.
hardwood floors. So what's interesting too is we actually had like mutuals before, like we worked with each other for like I think a year.
Yep.
And then found out that your cousin, right? Your cousin's with Jake.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like
I still always forget that.
Yeah. And like so Jacob Han, he hasn't been on the podcast yet. I've had a lot of the guys that were on my team.
You gotta get Jake on the podcast.
That's what I'd be saying. I'm trying to get the whole squad to come out for like a reunion thing because we haven't seen each other in a while.
You should. That'd be dope.
I think it would be fun. But so I'd found out like a year into working with you, and you're just like, yeah, I think, what did you say? You were like, yeah, my cousin, he had a game last weekend or something like that. And I was like, I had a game last weekend too. And you're like, yeah, he plays at this like little school, in Janesville, whatever.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, I play at a little school in Janesville too.
On your school.
And you're like, no, you rock. And I'm like, yeah, you rock, dude. No, it is. We jokingly like called it fake college all the time.
Yeah.
Because it was like it's just a high school with a UW sign on the front of it. I mean, granted, the education was better, and
yeah, crazy things to know about it too. Yeah, my education at URock, because I went to URock also.
Oh, really?
Yeah, was
Look at that.
way more intense than my 4-year school.
Really?
Yeah, way more intense. Oh my gosh, I could slack off so hard at my 4-year school.
Well, that's what I've actually heard that from a lot of people that went to URock, and that's something I actually enjoyed about it was like the intimacy of the classrooms, whereas like you actually do get to like, I know all my professors. Like, yeah. I mean, I probably don't remember all their first names off the top of my head, but I could point out each one of them right now and be like, oh, that's so-and-so, that's George Jones, that's whoever would have. And they were all cool, all really, really professional. And the fact that you could like every single one of them knew every kid in the class because there's 20 kids.
Yeah.
As opposed to 200.
Absolutely.
So I thought that's kind of interesting. But I'd found out after like a year of already knowing you, and these are just like two separate, completely groups of people. And then you're like, oh yeah, no, that's my cousin. And I'm
that's
like,
my cousin.
No
Yup.
way. So that's just kind of that had always blown my mind.
To be fair, it is not difficult to be related to a Hannes. There are 12 of them. So
they multiply quickly. There's a lot of them.
Right.
There is a lot of them. I've been to a couple of parties, and there's just so many.
God bless you for being at the parties.
Yeah, I think it was the last one was like Ethan's graduation party, and there was just
everybody everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, there was like two full
Seas of
volleyball
people.
games going on. I think there's a bonfire over here. Some other kids like playing wiffle ball. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
This guy got squads.
Big family. You gotta come to
teams.
Christmas or something one of these times.
I should. I'll pull up. You guys do like White Elephant or?
We should. No, they do a free for all, and it's madness.
Oh my goodness, I could see that getting wild. So they're big basketball family, right?
Yep.
So and you're not playing basketball, but you played basketball. What are like the differences in like practicing for a sport as opposed to a performance? Because while you're still performing in both, I'm sure there's some subtle differences that you'd probably be able to point out.
Absolutely, and it's super nuanced. So one thing that I would point out right away is that whenever you're practicing for a sport, usually it's like a numbers game. Like, how fast are you moving up and down the court? How many free throws are you hitting? You know what I mean? You can boil a lot of these things down to numbers. And then when you're practicing for like a performance, usually the finer parts are in the minutia of the movement. So it's like the details of like your texture or quality of movement, which is all very subjective. So it's like whatever either the choreographer wants, whatever your dance instructor has been trained. So if they're trained in a different style of dance, then they might emphasize a different texture of movement differently. So that's a huge glaring difference, right? So like you get numbers versus like this subjectivity of like almost art, and one could argue that it's like a huge philosophical idea about the differences between dance being a sport versus not being a sport. Is that like some of these finer things you can't always like quantify in numbers.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it would be difficult. What would you say? What would be your opinion? You think it's a sport or an art, or more if you had to lean one or the other? I feel like it's kind of both.
Yeah, it's kind of both, and I truly don't care. Like,
or a physical art.
You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I'm just like, I don't care whatever you want to call it. Like, are you dancing or are you not? Like,
yeah. I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
As opposed to get hung up on that.
To get hung up on it, yeah. I don't have any time for that kind of argument.
Yeah.
But I would encourage people to like figure it out for themselves, like whatever they feel. If they want dance, to be a sport, commit, do it all in, and find the numbers that you need to make sure that you're, hitting those sport numbers. Yeah. And then vice versa. Like if you're thinking that it's just an art, like, well, then how are you subjectively, making yourself better there?
Yeah. And for yourself. And I think it, it's interesting. It's especially when we compare it to like something like acting, where it's like, there's a lot of someone's performance, like just knowing the line, just like the same way as just knowing the moves isn't necessarily everything. It's the style in which you do it, like the person themselves and the presentation and everything about it, I feel like. So there is a lot of layers kind of underneath do I just have the choreography down? Right. Which I think is pretty interesting. It's something that's fascinated me, and I just messaged you actually recently, a couple months ago, back when we were figuring this out. I want to start doing some dance. Finding out that high school was late for some of your friends makes me a little nervous. Because I'm 23.
So it's late in the context of like when most people start their dance journey. But I would say that dance is approachable, and that you can start your dance journey like wherever you're at. Okay. And yeah, that word late is definitely very contextual to like the average dance journey.
That makes sense. And probably people that want to maybe pursue it in some sort of professional sense with teaching and whatnot probably would like to have as many years under their belt as possible, which makes sense. Right. So I'm not trying to teach people, just
right. And there's that whole like, so whatever your parents put you in is what you do. Yeah. And so parents are like finding these things, like you're gonna be like, in swim and like be a guppy to start or whatever, or you're gonna be in dance and be like these little dance princes and princesses or whatever. Yeah. Or you're gonna be in sports and doing pee-wee. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's whatever it is for little kids, and then they like start doing it, and then they continue to do it. So if dance is the thing that they continued to do, well, then they've been dancing for so long or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is it about dance that because obviously you seem to like it. You're not like, oh, upset that you were, forced kind of, or like pushed to do dance at the beginning, right? So
Right.
you love it. So what is it about dance as opposed to maybe other, I don't want to call it just like an extracurricular, but like just other thing as opposed to sports or maybe, yeah, other activities, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about dance that like has drawn you in and kept you so excited about it?
Yeah. I feel like there are, I mean, a handful of things. And when I start running through some of these things in my head, I'm like, oh, well, you can still find some of those things like in sports and stuff like that. Like there's a level of artistry even in basketball. And like when you see somebody, bring a layup through and you're just like, oh my God, finessed it to the hoop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely
You're
some
like,
of that.
that's some artistry, right?
Yeah.
But I would argue that that's one of the things that really has kept me close to dance is the artistry, and definitely have to chalk it up to, my college professors. So at my 4-year, the dance program was probably the most difficult part of my
Really?
degree, and they only offer a dance minor. So
Oh my God.
yeah, so I have a minor in dance, and it was probably the hardest part of my entire collegiate career. But they really broaden your horizons and offer you so many other opportunities to start exploring dance and thinking about dance in different ways. I'm sure that the same becomes true as you grow in adulthood into sports and things too. You start becoming more aware of like these finer details of, sports, and it becomes probably more than a numbers game. Boiling it down earlier was probably, an over refinement, but
Yeah.
I would 100% say that opportunity for artistic expression, to explore concepts, ideas, and oftentimes to abstract those concepts and ideas.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't think of it in that way. For me, it's been something that the reason I've been so interested in wanting to do it, and I've told people for like the last couple of years, I'm like, man, I just want to take some dance lessons and just be able to like not feel like my arms and legs are disconnected from each other when I'm excited about a song that's playing or whatever, especially in doing music and everything. Yeah, I just feel like it would be an interesting form of self-expression and just like be able to be comfortable with myself while I'm dancing, as opposed to like everyone feels like kind of awkward when they're like bobbing their head at the club. I don't want to be the guy that's just like this at the club,
Right. Or even on the wall.
or at the wedding. Yeah, and you're just kind of sitting there like, yeah, I'm just gonna hold the drink, babe. It's good. Like I don't want to do that. I want to like I feel like it's more fun to just be able to be a competent dancer. I don't need to be the greatest dancer ever, but just be able to dance to whatever the top songs are on the radio would be really cool.
Yeah, and I would argue that your best instructors are going to be the ones that are going to embrace that idea, and then to help you really carve out your own path in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of my favorite instructors, we did improvisational games, and we're honing our skills to be able to move from a more authentic place. That was the goal of that, and I would say that a lot of those same principles followed me even through my K through 12 instructing years.
Oh, really?
So yeah, now that I'm not really teaching K through 12 right now, that has obviously changed and shifted, but some of those core concepts you keep for life,
What is an improv like dance lesson look like? What do some like improv drills look like for that?
Yeah, there are a lot of different improv drills that you can do. One of the easiest ones is to start with the idea of whatever you do, you can't stop moving. And then your instructor will call out what has to lead you in that movement. So maybe you say, whatever you do, you can't stop moving using your head. And your head has to lead all your movement, whatever your direction you're going. And there aren't wrong answers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you just begin then an exploration. So long as you're trying to maintain the parameters and you're moving through that journey, then you're killing
You're
the
doing
class.
it right. Yeah.
You're doing it.
That makes sense. That seems like a very approachable way to kind of like get into something like that. You know, that seems like a very manageable way, and I'm sure you build on top of that and whatnot.
Yeah.
What was the most, or what maybe has been the most difficult thing as a student of dance for you? Maybe something that was like a really big roadblock that took you forever to figure out how to like get a grasp on this, or if it was just an aspect of dance as a whole. I'm not sure.
This is going to sound really dumb, and I tell my students this story all the time, but as you grow in whatever you're doing, sometimes you do face those challenges, and then you begin to dream about those challenges, or you have nightmares about those challenges. I had this recurring nightmare for the longest of time. I was working on a skill. It's called a pirouette. What you're going to do essentially is turn right with grace. And so I'm working on these pirouettes and I'm trying to get multiple in a row. And that's something that you have to continue to hone, and it's all these fine motor skills and things like that. And I just was not getting it, right? I just could not get this, however many I was working on. And I kept having this recurring nightmare. And it's the dumbest thing, but basically in my head, so I'm doing this turn, I'm on stage, right? And maybe this is where my stage fright comes from. And turning, and instead of me falling over, the sensation that I was having was that the world was coming to me. So it was like the world was falling,
inceptioning
to me. Yeah. It's the dumbest thing. So if there are any like dream wizards out there that know anything about any of this,
we've had some on the show.
I would love to understand an interpretation there. I eventually got like past that block, but not only was it manifesting in my dreams, I was understanding that mental block was manifesting in my reality. Like it's part of the reason why I wasn't able to achieve these multiple turns in a row was because I was in my head about it.
Yeah. So you were just so fixated on it and like nervous about how it could go wrong that you're going to keep tripping you up.
Right. Exactly. Or even thinking about all the things that I wasn't doing right and not able to, enjoy the things that I was doing well about turning.
Yeah. That's crazy. And that's one movement, that you're doing. I mean, you're doing it a few times, summing it up, but that's crazy. Is there a move that you found in teaching then that has been very difficult for maybe beginner to, intermediate dancers to get? That's like a very common thing that a lot of people in dance culture would be like, oh my God, I hated when I had to get over that.
Not that I can think of like specifically to that. When you think of, or when you started saying that, and I think of like different challenges that you overcome, like some of the smallest things that you don't think about are super challenging, especially for those younger dancers, like skipping.
Really?
Yeah, it takes a significant amount of fine motor skills because you're doing cross lateral movement, which means that you're moving one half in opposition to your other half.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really heady. And for some kids, they just cannot skip.
Really?
Cannot skip.
That's wild.
And they'll be behind like the pack, quote unquote, behind the pack, and just won't be able to skip. The same thing goes for like, I don't know if you've ever seen people do like polkas.
What's a polka?
A polka.
The Wisconsin State dance.
Oh,
Wisconsin State
it
dance?
is the Wisconsin State dance.
I didn't know that. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, so to like boil it down, a polka step, you step forward, quickly change feet, and then step again. So you go 1, 2, 3, and then change 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so it's almost like a gallop.
It is a gallop, but it alternates.
Okay.
So you gallop and switch.
Okay.
That step trips people up super hard.
I could see myself falling.
Super hard. And it's because it's another one of those things that's like cross-lateral movement where your arms and your legs are doing things in opposition that they don't feel natural. And when you boil it down, it actually really is natural because it's a variation of walking.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this like almost your whole life. You've been walking, and now you decide to add in two extra technically steps in there into your walk, and now the whole world is upside down and you lose your shit.
That's funny. You're walking with style, walking with rhythm.
Yeah.
Right? That's interesting.
And it's super difficult for some people, frequently for people.
Yeah.
And they'll want to do so. They'll want to, instead of walking, opposite arms like this, they'll want to do same arms. And it's like the most.
And now they've become so uncoordinated because they're thinking about this thing, the skip that they're afraid to do.
Sometimes you just have to like let it be.
Yeah.
Just like with the turn thing, you just kind of like let it go and like.
You just have to do it wrong a couple of times and just like finish it sometimes. I feel like that'll help.
What do they say? Embrace the suck.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You just got to embrace the suck on that one.
Yeah, that is the thing. As I don't know what's like the oldest people you've ever had to teach.
So I do teach adults.
Okay.
Yep, I'm currently teaching adults.
Okay.
And I would say the oldest that I've worked with was probably in their 60s.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
And that's ballroom stuff, right?
Ballroom stuff, but I've also worked with dancers who are dancing in other like codified styles, jazz and tap, and they're in their 60s.
That's crazy.
Yep.
I applaud them for
I mean,
going
they're not
it.
doing like flips and tricks and stuff.
Yeah, but that's still crazy that they're even doing it. Because that's what I was going to get to was like for me, and I see this a lot, and it's very intimidating. I feel like the older you get to try new things like that, there's already a culture. Like if you if you didn't play basketball your whole life and you just went to like a men's league at a Y or the Jack in Janesville,
That
like
would scare the shit out of me.
you would be pretty scared. You'd be like, man, these guys, everybody, first off, everybody knows each other because they all play with each other. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. You're like, I don't even know how to shoot the ball, you know, like whatever. It's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing when it comes to like, if I were to just walk into a dance studio, I would be like a deer in headlights, very scared. And that was something I really wanted to do acting for like the first time in college. And so it was the same thing. It was like, I had to like jack myself up I only did it my second year because I wanted to do it the whole first year, but I was just too nervous because I'd see all the theater kids and I'd be like, I don't know if I'm gonna vibe with the theater kids. It doesn't seem like they really vibe with athletes, like all this weirdo shit.
Yeah.
And then like you finally get into it and it's not as scary, but there is like feels like there's a barrier, and I feel like it's difficult having to start at that 6-year-old level while everyone else is adults.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like that's probably, maybe you've seen that with dance where people are like very timid at first and unable to even like loosen their body up, I feel like.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I feel like I can empathize too with like that theater thing in like the same but different coin. So dance from 8 to however long. And then I actually decided to do basketball. I think it was my sophomore year of high school.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, sophomore year, and then, or maybe it was junior year. I think it was only junior and senior year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so there was like a barrier to entry for me there too, because I was like, okay, well, I've already done all these like arts things and stuff like that. I don't know if it's just like I don't make friends easy or what, but so I had that same, I think, or similar feeling that maybe you were experiencing about like diving into theater. I was like, I don't know if I vibe well with like these kids, or
because it is a lot about I feel like when you're trying to start a new thing, like if it's a new class or a new anything, like if you show up the first day and like you get that feeling that you're like, oh, this is not for me. And it could not even be the thing itself that you're there to learn. Like you could go to a yoga class and you're just like, ooh, none of these people, the teacher themselves, whatever it is, but you might enjoy yoga. You just didn't find out because of that. And I guess I just got in my head like thinking it was going to be that. Luckily I had a great acting teacher.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were cool, but there was still a little bit of like, you know, it's like, at least maybe I was feeling it more so internally, but it's like, I suck and I know I suck and everybody knows I suck. And it's like, even if they're nice about it, it was still in my head that like, dude, I'm at 0 right now.
Yeah.
And everybody else is at a college level.
Yeah.
And so that made it very difficult. And I feel like for me, it is like, I wanted to get into some dance. And would you consider like what, like someone like Chris Brown, that's like contemporary? You would consider that, right? Or is that strictly like a hip hop? What is that considered genre wise?
So yeah, genre wise, it'd be like street dance.
Okay.
And some people even like move away from like that kind of nomenclature. But a lot of the conversation that I've had, especially with like hip hop heads, are that basically hip hop is its own specific style of movement. It comes out of street dance. It comes out of, you know, the 80s, late 70s scenes of breakdance and of, you know, hip hop music.
Yeah.
And so that's its own thing, very specific. And then everything else after that and different from that is separate but similar. So then you've got like subsets and styles like crumping, and you've got whacking, and what are these words that you're throwing at me? What do they mean? Yeah, so all these different types of movement come, and they're basically like brought up through culture in different areas of the United States for the most part. So like I said, you've got whacking or crumping that comes from like the South. And then you've got, you know, the hip hop heads who are really working to preserve what hip hop is. So that's a big conversation that's being had like in the dance world, dance industries, is, you know, really focusing on what hip hop is, what hip hop isn't, and being sure that you're like labeling it appropriately, because frequently what happens is you get hip hop in these studios and it really gets like whitewashed, and it ends up becoming really just pop dance or street styles of dance. And like, yes, it's influenced by hip hop and it sometimes will have movement from that, but like at its heart, is it purely hip hop? The answer usually is no.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to figure out what are like the big differences between like something that would be maybe pop, like influenced by hip hop, as opposed to like just hip hop. Or
Yeah.
what are those kind of movements usually?
Yeah, so they totally vary, but like at the heart of it, when you go back, hip hop and hip hop music has all these different like codified things that like make it so that it's hip hop, and like you meet those different criteria and things like that. Everything else after that, like I said, is iteration. And then in that you've got like subsets too. So like I said, you've got your whacking, you've got your electric boogaloo.
Where does twerking fit into all this?
Twerking fits in like way up the top. If we're thinking like an inverted pyramid, you've got like hip hop at the bottom, and then twerking is like coming way up here at the top.
Very separate.
Yeah, very separate, but has its own roots in the African diaspora. So it's like separate, but maybe even older than hip hop is.
Twerking.
Arguably, yeah.
Wow, dude. So like ancient people were out here just throwing it back.
Yeah. Doing tricks on that thing.
That's crazy. That's awesome, man. So do you have to learn? So like when you're like learning, and obviously you got a minor in dance, like are you having to also then study sort of like the cultural influences, like where these things are coming up? Because I mean, you sound extremely knowledgeable about this stuff. So.
In the minor program, like you do get like a certain level of that. And it was covered really well, but very broadly. So because it's a minor program, I'm sure that if I had majored in this or had gone on to continuing studies, that would have been more of that. But a lot of the information that I get now are from conversations with real people who are either studying or saturated in it. So I talk to people like my friend Joey Hernandez, shout out from Beloit.
Shout out Joey.
Yeah. You know Joey?
No, I don't.
Oh,
but
hey,
just
yeah.
shout him out.
Shout him out.
I'm out in Beloit all the time, Janesville. So
yeah, Joey's awesome. So we have great conversations about, about hip hop, the hip hop experience, what hip hop is like right now. Same thing with my friend John Comics. Shout out John. Super awesome dude. Again, a person who has actually worked with some of these hip hop heads who have started to really codify what the genre is and what it isn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so when you start having those conversations with people, you start to understand and you start to clarify that for yourself, for your training, for, what you want to be passing down. Because I think what happens is a lot of people get in these studios and they want to do hip hop or things that are like cool like hip hop, but what they're teaching is different than hip hop. And it's important to note that difference.
Yeah, it's probably more of like a mainstreamed pop appeal with.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
With hip hop influences.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's something that I've been really interested in, is sort of that realm. Probably more so the like performative. I don't know what you would consider someone like. I'm not going to try to dance as good as Chris Brown, but I just would like to be able to, like, if I'm on stage, do something that's
be smooth at least.
Yeah, just look like I know what I'm doing with my feet, instead of just jumping up and down a bunch of times. But yeah, so that's always been something that's interested me, is like, how do you know, especially when it comes to like the names, as an outsider that's not in dance culture at all, to just be like I'm looking at these names of things like, oh, contemporary. You obviously got hip hop, pop, whatever, and then you've got ballet and all these other things. Like, what is what?
Yeah.
What is what? And obviously, you've probably specialized in some, I imagine, but you probably have a general knowledge on all of them.
Yeah, and that's super confusing. I've always wondered about that too. Is like, why do we call contemporary? Well, I mean, we call it what it is because it's what's happening at the time and in the moment. But I mean, one could argue that everything that we're doing at the time and in the moment is then contemporary dance.
That's what I guess always confuse when people. Yeah, people always confuse me with that. Even in film and stuff like that, I'm always confused. Like, okay, wait, this isn't contemporary anymore. Like, it's interesting. So something could be hip hop and contemporary.
Right. It could be.
There's gonna be some crossover, I imagine, since hip hop is like the most popular genre.
Right. So I think that the hip hop heads would argue that hip hop is what it is, and that it was set primarily when it was set.
Okay.
And then anything after that, contemporary is like contemporary. Maybe you've got like contemporary with hip hop influences. Maybe you've got contemporary with ballet influences or things like that. It's not that we codify what we call contemporary dance today as contemporary with ballet influences. We don't really say that. But for the most part, when you're talking to dancers who are dancing contemporary, usually it's graceful, fluid, has all of these elements that come from a lot of ballet training.
Gotcha.
But ballet training doesn't make a contemporary dancer.
That's so weird.
It's really messed up.
Yeah.
There's
it's
a
like
lot.
squares and rectangles, man. It's
It
freaking
is.
me out.
Yeah, right?
That's okay. So when you like, as someone who is as like enthralled in dance as you are, do you watch any of the, like the dancing shows?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about them? That says it all.
Yeah, right. So I do watch the dancing shows. I don't as much anymore. I have difficulty with them because I feel like when they started out, they really did a really great job of emphasizing the artists, the artistry, choreographers, the dancers themselves, their stories, things like that. And then as they kind of continued, the production level film-wise had to go up, and entertainment-wise had to go up. And so sometimes I feel like that has bastardized the realm of like that dance. So it's like dance entertainment. Or
you think it's like dumbing it down so that people that are less they want to appeal to a wider audience, I imagine.
Sometimes I feel like it does do that, but more frequently than not, I feel like it is about making a full piece of entertainment. That's curious. A full piece of entertainment, like live as it's happening. And so they'll hit you with these camera angles and be like, I just kind of want to take in this piece for what it fully is.
Yeah.
And see it from like a bird's eye view for the most part.
As if you were there. As
Closer to
all
as
the
if you were
cutting.
there.
That makes sense.
And so they get all the cutting, and then like the last season of So You Think You Can Dance, which is coming back, but was really popular for a long time. The last one that I watched, they started doing things with like grayscale and black and white stuff, and it was like, it's really curious for performance art or entertainment.
Yeah.
But like as a person who wants to consume the dance for the sake of the choreography, for the artistry, and for the dancers, it takes me out of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm curious too then, for someone like yourself, where do you go to appreciate that? Is it your only thing to go to like big time recitals? Or like where are you going to actually get to appreciate that then?
Yeah, for sure. Live production is where it's at.
Okay.
There's something beautiful and amazing about being in the place, in the room where it happens.
Yeah.
Where live performance is taking place, you know? So in Whitewater, they've got Young Auditorium. I saw Alvin Ailey there.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, big ballet company, all black ballet company, foundation.
Super cool.
For black dance, and really emphasizing that participation.
Yeah.
And so they were there, Young Auditorium. Gosh, I want to say I saw them probably 5-6 years ago at least.
Okay. Wow.
But then Chicago and Milwaukee.
Yeah. That
Yep.
makes sense. We're right between the two cities, so you got some options.
Yeah. I'm pretty fortunate in that. But you're not wrong, like as far as like big recitals or like even big competitions. Like sometimes you go to some of these competitions and they put on pretty amazing pieces of artwork. And so competition is another one of those realms of dance where it's like diving more into like the sports side of things. And it's always curious how much artistry you'll find there. Frequently it is a lot, especially once you start getting like closer to the cities. And like, yes, are they going to have like the clean lines, and they're going to, get the points for competition because they're synchronized and, they've got this technique. But they're also usually demonstrating a high level of artistry, and the choreographers are pretty bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I imagine that it could go either way when it comes to like maybe a competitive aspect of it, where people might be forced to take bigger risks when it comes to the artistry side of things, and that's going to either pan out really good or maybe pan out not so good. And I was kind of curious as to, what, as someone who, it seems when you're talking about like these dance shows and how maybe they've kind of lost sight of, what makes consuming dance really fun for yourself, where these other shows in still competing, when you're going to these big competitions, whatever, they're somehow doing it in a way that is executed better. What do you think that is? Just because you're there in person, or do you think it's because they're doing whatever they're doing on the TV for, I don't know, what's the big one with the celebrities? Dancing with the Stars or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
Would you ever do Dancing with the Stars? Become a coach?
Absolutely not.
No?
No way.
You would not?
No way.
I'm sure that payday's pretty good.
I can imagine. It probably is.
Celebrity, you
yeah.
get to hang out with somebody for a couple months.
And that's not like knocking them at all. Like what they do is amazing, and it requires like a specific skill set. But
different than what you're interested in doing.
right, definitely different than what I'm interested in doing.
That's fair. It's always interesting to hear when people are like in a specific field, and a lot of times like the popularized version of that is not usually. I mean, it's the same thing with like music artists, where it's like their biggest song is usually not the song that their fans are really fucking with all that much.
Exactly. Yep.
That's interesting. So you wouldn't do Dancing with the Stars. For you to consume dance and enjoy it is usually live then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the experience. Live, and the best part too about it is like frequently when you're going to some of these shows, like depending on like the venue, you might have like a really intimate connection then with the dancers. So like if you're going to Madison and you're going to like black box theaters where you're almost like on the same level with them, you're literally in a small black box. It's a room that's painted all black.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're performing like right in front of you. And it's quite ephemeral and visceral experience, like just depending on the art, obviously, but it can really get you going.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's and like you said, very intimate space like that.
Absolutely.
It's got to bring a different level to it. I'm interested too. So obviously you've taught for quite a while now. How long have you been teaching?
Forever, it feels like. I think it's almost 20 years. So I started when I was 16.
20 years of teaching dance.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I'm going to be 32. So 16 years.
16
there we go.
years.
That's math.
16 years. So 16 years in teaching dance. Do you have any horror stories as a teacher? Maybe some students that you don't have to obviously no names or anything like that, but just has there ever been like something that's like this just went so wrong?
Yeah, God, Zoe was the worst. No.
Shout out Zoe.
Yeah, for real. Not any. You know what? I feel like my brain does a really good job of protecting me from those memories, and it's just like you don't need those anymore. Like just get rid of them.
That's fair.
Yeah, horror stories. Not that I can think of. I mean, there's always those stories where you're just like, you forgot like maybe an article of clothing that was pertinent to what you're supposed to be doing, but the show goes on. Like, I mean,
yeah.
And like, who's going to really know?
That's fair. Yeah. So and when you're teaching, then you're getting people ready for this big performance.
Yep.
How is that as opposed to being the one performing it to now like, okay, students, like you're going on, like you're probably backstage doing things, I'm sure, but like just having to like watch them go execute this thing that they've been working on. I'm sure that's even a different kind of pressure because it's like you've worked very hard to get them ready. You know how hard they've worked, and you know as a performer yourself all the stresses that are going through their mind. What is going through your head when like students are having to perform?
Yeah, I feel like it's a double-edged sword because I'm equally excited for them and there's a lot of joy bringing them to that point, but then also full of anxiety. I'm almost more anxious before my dancers go on than I am for like myself to perform.
Even less control.
Yeah, even less control.
Yeah.
Even less control. And it's funny too because it translates to other people's dancers. So I'll see like another dancer come on and be like, "Oh my gosh, they're going to kill it." And then I'm nervous for them for some reason.
Yeah.
Like I don't even really know them, like not from any other point, but to know that maybe it's just that my body immediately empathizes with like being on stage or something.
Yeah.
I just like immediately get anxious.
I did the same. I get like a sadness sometimes when I watch like shows like I don't really watch it very often anymore, but like America's Got Talent or something like that, and you see someone go on and they're like a singer, or they just like miss a note, or even any of these singing shows, anything like that, and they miss something, and you're like, oh man, I get like deeply sad for that person, and like it's a competition. Some of the people are really bad on purpose. They let them through so that it'll be like a thing for TV and whatever. But I'm just like, man, that sucks, dude. I could not imagine being up there right now and that happening. So I feel like I've definitely felt similar feelings to what you're describing.
Yeah, it's like a high level of empathy.
Yeah, it's almost I would say it's not fun most of the time. It's kind of tormenting in a way.
It is a little tormenting. It was like, why do you do this to yourself?
Yeah, like I don't need to be sad about this. This is, I mean, I also think it's a superpower in a way too, where it's like you can kind of understand where people are coming from, and I think that can like soothe over a lot of like conflicts and things like that. But when it comes to this random person, I have no idea who they are, and now I'm nervous for them to go on stage.
Yeah.
That might not be healthy for me
Exactly.
to do every day or however often.
Oh,
you know?
no. Can you imagine, like, your cortisol levels just, like, flying through the roof?
Yeah, you'd be a mess, dude.
No,
A
adrenals
complete mess.
burn out.
So, I mean, we've kind of, in segueing a little bit, we've been talking a lot about, like, the artistry, and that's kind of been something that's really kept you close to dance. How then, I also introduced you as a mixologist. That's how I met you, was at the bar that we used to work at. You still working there, right?
Yep.
You kind of come back. And so when it comes to the artistry behind mixology and especially even bartending in itself, especially at a place where you're at, where it's, it's making really awesome drinks, you're getting to smoke cocktails and do all these infusions and everything like that. I think there's almost a performative aspect of that as well. You are really hosting whoever the guests that are coming in to enjoy drinks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a performative aspect to that, because that's part of what they're coming in and paying for, is that experience.
Yeah.
They want to come in, they want to see you make the cocktail, they want to know what ingredients are going in there, they want to, see you smoke the cocktail or whatever it is that you're doing. They want that experience, and craft cocktailing is so much more than just like, the recipes and being a mixologist and things like that.
Yeah.
It's delivering an experience.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, when it comes into it, even, it was always interesting for me getting to learn from people like yourself, Renee, and Chaz, because I don't drink. So, like, that was a very intimidating thing for me getting into bartending, and especially doing, like, higher level of bartending when it comes to, like, mixology and, like, learning, like, why these flavors go well with these flavors, and these different, like, different people are going to have different palates, and making things work for people that maybe wouldn't traditionally work for them. And so, like, learning even, like, the history, like, some people want to know, like, where is this bourbon from? How long is it aged? Like, all this crazy shit. And there is a lot that goes into it. I'm curious, were you drawn to, like, mixology itself before Maxwell? Were you interested in, like, cocktails and stuff like that, or was it kind of like you got a job and then it was like I got thrown into it and then I found out I loved it?
Yeah, it was definitely the second one.
Okay.
That was 100% my experience.
Yeah.
So I started off at a fine dining restaurant in Whitewater called the Black Sheep. And they have craft cocktails there. I started off as a server. My friend Marge got me in and started serving right away, hit the floor running. But part of their process at that time was that you had to be making some of your own cocktails. So while, the kitchen is putting your order together or whatever it is, you're making some of your own cocktails. And so you got to learn some of the basics there. Frequently, though, on those busy nights, we obviously had a bartender and stuff like that. I would slip into that role then. So after serving for however long, slipped into a bartender / manager role. Started really getting more familiar with coffee drinks, actually.
Really?
Yeah, is where it, like, started, because they also had an espresso machine there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That'll be a hit.
Yep. And so for the lunch hour, they were frequently doing different kinds of espresso drinks, like lattes, and then they had all these different syrups and stuff that we could be adding. So it was just kind of like a whole evolution of crafting good beverages.
Yeah. Were you interested in, prior to, like, when maybe you would go out with friends or things like that, like, into, like, a really good cocktail? Or before this, were you more so like, just, if I'm going out with my friends, like, I just get whatever I get to drink, like a vodka, whatever, or what, something like that? Or were you into cocktails prior?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was into cocktails prior. That would be awesome.
Because that's the same thing where I didn't even understand that, like I thought it was like this super, like, obscene thing that, like, only a very few people did. When, like, you see, like, people in movies or James Bond or whatever gets the martini, and you're just like, okay, like, people don't really get that. Like,
yeah, right.
And then you're like,
only rich spies get that.
Yeah, and then, like, you're there and it's like, no, dude, like, people, like, really, like, have a love for the craftsmanship of this. And there's so much that goes into it.
Yep.
And it's kind of crazy when you, like, start thinking about it.
Yeah, it really is. And they do. I think that it's difficult sometimes to find that locally, depending where you're, growing up. And in the, what do we call that? Like the 2000 teens? Is that what we call that?
The 2010s?
The 2010s.
That's what I hear people calling it. Yeah,
all right.
2010s.
So in the 2010s, is that what we're calling it now?
Yeah,
It's got its own.
It's the 10s, and then we're in the 20s. So yeah, that makes sense.
Dope. Okay. So in the 10s, like when I was growing up, like that wasn't really a thing. There wasn't a scene to get, you know, really nice craft cocktail beverages.
Yeah.
And now I like where I'm working, I see people who are young like coming in and they're like exploring craft cocktails. I was like, damn, I wish I was that when I was, you know, young, instead of slinging back, you know, vodka Red Bulls and bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it would have been way cooler to have like experienced alcohol and cocktails or malt and beers or whatever from like that kind of point of view.
Yeah.
But I don't know that our culture necessarily breeds that here. And
No, not
Wisco.
necessarily. Yeah, no. Wisconsin's more about getting to a destination with the
Absolutely.
beverages as opposed to enjoying that
the journey.
Yeah, I think so. Now one of my I think it's a lot of bartenders' least favorite questions, especially when they do any form of mixology in like creating drinks.
I feel like I know exactly what you're gonna ask me.
Well, what's your favorite?
I always tell people too, and this is the worst thing. I always tell them a Moscow Mule.
Easy, super easy to make.
It's because it's so easy to make. I'm just
Yeah.
like, yeah, Moscow Mule. You guys both want one?
Love
Like,
a
here we
couple
go.
Moscow. Love me a good Moscow Mule. Yeah.
And I mean, it's nice too because like we present it in the copper mugs and stuff or whatever,
Yeah.
and we're like,
Still a solid beverage.
Yeah.
But probably not your personal favorite.
if people ask me the right question, they're like, well, what do you like to drink?
Mm.
Then I'll be like, okay, let's dive into this because somebody's actually curious about like palate and stuff, and be like, so usually my go-tos are our Sidecar. That's what I love to recommend to people because I think it's really well balanced. I think it is a little more spirit forward, so it might, you know, entice some of those people who like that edit of things.
For the people that don't know a Sidecar, do you want to break down just the basic? You don't have to
Oh
get
yeah,
into
for
measurements
sure.
or anything.
Super easy. So cognac, I usually do. I'll give you the measurements. I do 2
Okay.
ounces of cognac, 1 ounce of Cointreau, and then 0.75 fresh lemon juice. Shake the
Nice.
shit out of it and put it in a beautiful coupe glass. Serve it up with your favorite garnish. I usually do an orange peel.
That's a beautiful drink right there.
Absolutely.
People
And it's
love the
good
Sidecar.
because you can do it in the summertime, and it's super versatile too. So like you can just like tweak the ingredients just enough to be like, okay, now it's like a little bit more seasonal. So it's got like nutmegs or something in it,
Mm.
and now you got it for fall. Or you can add rosemary, and now you got it for winter.
Yeah.
Or you can just do the classic, and you got it for spring and summer. So
Yeah.
super versatile cocktail. That's why I always recommend it to people. And for like, it was like, I want to say 5 summers ago or something like that. That was like what I was drinking.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Sidecars.
I mean, it's a very like you said, it's a versatile drink. It's something that I think a lot of people they don't maybe even think of right away too. So it's kind of like, oh, what's a Sidecar, you know? And I think there's like a mystery aspect to it as well that
For sure.
sells. It's always interesting. Whenever people would ask like they would be like, oh, can you make me something? You know, what's your favorite? Like, especially someone who doesn't drink. Like, I would just be like, well, what do you usually like? I just would have to like defer to like, well, what do you usually drink, and then make something off of that based off if it was they're drinking clear liquors or if they're drinking, you know, whiskey
Yep.
or bourbon or something like that.
That's my
So,
go-to if they're asking like, well, what's good on this menu? I'm like, everything's fucking good. Like,
yeah, everything's good. Just you
what do
might
you
not,
mean? Like, we're a craft cocktail bar. We don't do shitty cocktails.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. What do you think this is?
everything's good, but what do you prefer to drink? Like,
Yeah.
is usually the segue there.
That's totally fair, and it is a give and a take because you're like not wanting to just like it does suck when you like recommend a drink and it's not a winner. They're
Mhm.
like they take that first sip and they're yeah, and you're like, do you want something else? No, I'm fine. I'll get you something else. I'll do it.
Right.
and
I
it's just that
absolutely will.
awkwardness where you're just like, come on, dude.
And they think that they might be like inconveniencing for you. For anybody watching, not an inconvenience.
yeah,
100%.
would rather you enjoy the drink.
Let me make you a good cocktail.
Exactly. I feel like that's most people's mindset in that, you know, environment.
Yeah.
Granted, if there's 300 people there and it's just me,
You're getting a Moscow Mule.
you're getting a Moscow Mule. Yeah.
You're getting
Every
a Moscow
time.
Mule.
I hope you like Moscow Mules. I hope you like ginger beer.
For real.
That's how it'd be. And especially, it is the funniest question. People will always ask, well, what's your favorite? And it's just such a silly thing. Anybody in the service industry, I feel like, gets that, whether you're serving or bartending.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just it's a funny question to get, I feel like. But
It is. Sidecars, hands down my go-to, but what I really like for people to explore are like fun tequilas and things right now. Yeah.
what's the tequila that you'd recommend?
Oh, right now, easiest like go-to for me is the Casamigos Reposado. And for people who haven't experienced tequila, if you're a whiskey person, you might find some of the same nuance in Reposado tequilas that you do, or even añejos, that you do in your whiskeys, your bourbons. because like this one, the Casamigos Reposado, has got like these amazing vanilla notes, especially on the back half. After you get through like the ideas of oakiness that's coming at the very beginning, you just get like this pure vanilla, and you're just like, oh my god, your whole palate is singing vanilla. So, but if you don't like vanilla, then that's not for you.
Then it might not be a hit.
Then just disregard everything that I said.
Yeah.
And keep drinking whiskey.
Yeah. Or you're gonna get a Moscow Mule if we forget about the whiskey thing. But
slide the copper to you. Boom.
Yeah, exactly. That's the easiest way. What has whether it's, I mean, because you've become somewhat of a specialist, I'd say, in both of these fields when it comes to dance, or when it comes to mixology and alcohol in that way. What has like diving so deep into these things maybe taught you about the rest of the world, or anything? It taught you anything along the way?
It has taught me that I am a recovering perfectionist and people pleaser.
Okay.
Yeah. And
recovering. So you're trying to address
my name's Evan, and I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I'm trying to address that and continue to address that. I think that's just so difficult to manage, is like wanting to do things to a certain level. It was kind of like our conversation earlier when I was talking about dance directors, and I can empathize with them that they want to be doing things at a certain level, and if they can't do them at that level, then they're just not going to do them.
Yeah.
And I can empathize with that, as like, I don't do things half-assed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, if I'm going to do cocktails, I'm going to do craft cocktails at the best cocktail establishment, and we're going to be slinging drinks every Friday and Saturday night. I'm going to be on, you know what I mean? Or vice versa. Like if I'm going to be doing, this dance program, like I'm going to cut my own music. I'm going to make it the best production that I can. I'm going to have full control over that. And I think a lot of it kind of stems from like me wanting to be that person in the driver's seat and needing that control. So that way I don't get upset when something goes awry at somebody else.
Oh, okay. So you think it's like, it's almost this layered thing where it really boils down to not wanting to upset other people, because
it really does. It's like it's almost like masochistic. It's like, I'd rather like inflict pain on myself than have you be involved, and then me for some reason get upset, and then I inflict pain on you. Right.
Yeah. No, I have that. I have very similar feelings, and it's I think that's a big part of where I get tripped up and stuck in my own head with overthinking about a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Where it's just like, I feel that I don't want to burden other people in the same way. Like I would rather have to walk however many 100 miles to hand you this thing, so just so you didn't have to go back, even if you had a plane or whatever to go get it. Like I don't want you to have to be inconvenienced.
Yep.
And so whatever roundabout way that means of me controlling things, that makes a lot of sense. What do you do to address that? You say you're recovering. How do you address that? I'm trying to figure out the secrets as well. So maybe you got some gems for me.
Yeah. So I'm trying to live by the 80-20 rule.
80-20.
With a lot of different parts of my life, and 80-20 applies so many different ways in so many different areas. But the main way that I'm trying to apply it is primarily in like content creation. It's that if I'm getting to a point with a piece of content where I'm 80% happy with it, I need to quit stumbling over myself to try and get it to that 100%.
Oh, okay.
So I need to be happy with that 80% and not let that final 20% trip me up.
Yeah.
So that's the 80-20 rule as far as it like applies to. And I know that there are some big marketing heads that talk about this. I don't know if it was Seth Godin or if it's Gary Vaynerchuk, or if it's probably both of them.
Yeah.
But that as it relates to content creation has helped me, but it also has helped me just like in life. It's like, okay, Evan, get yourself to like 80% of whatever it is that you need to do. And a lot of the times the 20% will just fall in place. So it's like, what's the quickest way to start exercising, which I need to start doing? It's getting your tennis shoes on. That's the 80% of the battle for me. But after I get my tennis shoes on, I feel so productive. I literally call them my productive shoes. Yeah, I'd be like walking around the house, be like, I got my productive shoes on. Like I'm doing all the shit. Like garbage, yes. Laundry, yes.
Well, it's kind of like once it was in a book I read recently. I've talked about a lot on the podcast, Atomic Habits. It talks all about
James Clear.
Yeah, it's all about like just building the habit of like doing that, like putting the shoes on, right? And at a certain point, you're gonna be like, well, I already got the shoes on. I might as well work out.
Finish
like,
the damn thing.
Exactly. Like you said, you're not gonna half-ass stuff, right? So it's like, I totally get that. And I think too, when you're talking on the 80-20 rule, it's it's something too where I think, at least for myself, I can't speak for everybody that is struggling in a similar way. I know that I oftentimes set the bar in my head really high. It's like it's self-defeating because I set it like to a point that I know I can't get, so that I can continue to be mad at myself that I'm not getting there. And where that 80% is probably what I can actually do, what I would actually be really happy with if it came out, or whatever it is, if it's art or anything else. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Just being like, okay, it's just about there. No, just switch that to that just about there equals it is there. And then, like you said, maybe the rest will fall into place.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't. You figure it out.
Right. And you learn to be like happy and to move forward in that and move forward from there. But at the end of the day, it's like kind of going back to content. I tell people all the time that, you know, postage is just better than perfect. Like, for one, nobody's going to remember that piece of content that you released yesterday. Like, they're not going to be like, oh my God, yeah, that post, like, yeah, you really should probably take that down. There was like some grammatical errors in there. So like, nobody's going to do that. And even if they are doing that, they're not going to remember it the next day. Yeah. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, it moves so fast. Even like gigantic like world moments like are just absolutely gone in a week.
Now. The slap that was heard across the world.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that was huge. It got a week's worth of everybody. We covered it. Every podcast in the world talked about it, made jokes, and then it's gone.
It's kind of fizzled out. Like, we still hear like remnants. Oh yeah, Will Smith loses this deal. Will Smith loses that deal. And we're like, okay, well, whatever the deals are, is he gaining like right now? I'm sure nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, like and that's what. So that's a great way of explaining it. Is no one's gonna be keeping tabs on that Instagram story you posted a couple days ago. You know, it's not that big of a deal.
It really isn't. And then you start talking about like stories, that's even more fleeting. You got 24 hours and that thing's gone.
Yeah.
Like
completely gone.
And people get hung up too, like even on their grid, and they're just like, oh, I don't want that on my grid. Well, like, archive it. Like, Instagram has a feature, you just archive it and it's poof, it's not there anymore.
Yeah. Like, no, that's a great point.
It's like I guess it's more of like a habit of like getting over myself. Like, get out of the way, Evan. Get over yourself. Be 80% happy with it. 20% will fall in place, or vice versa. The 20% that you're, you know, trying to focus on isn't really what's going to get you to where you want to be anyway.
Yeah. No, it really is a solid way of looking at things, especially when it comes to content creation and things of that nature. I recently heard something. It was on TikTok. I can't remember who it was, but they were like, do it as a joke. And that was like their advice was like, whatever it is you want to do that you're really stressing out about, whether it's like learning a new skill, if it's doing something online, YouTube, whatever, it was like, just do it as a joke at first. If it's so hard that you can't stop, because I feel like a lot of people, we get stuck in our heads and we're like, oh, there's no way that because I'm going to have to fix this thing. We're like trying to problem solve ahead of time.
Yep.
And you don't know until you're out there, you know, until you're in front of the camera and you press record. Then you realize, oh, maybe I should have a script down a little bit, or maybe I should have some bullet points or whatever it is. And you don't know that until you've done it, you know, unless you talk to someone else that gives you those tips. And so their advice was just do it as a joke.
Yep.
Don't take it seriously. Do it as a joke at first. Doesn't have to be for anybody. Doesn't have to go anywhere. Do it as a joke, and you're going to find things out that you wouldn't have expected. Yep. And it's probably going to be easier than you thought too.
It definitely will be. I think that's a great philosophy, honestly, just to kind of get a foot in the door for whatever it is that you're working on. And I think that kind of comes back to also too is so not taking myself so seriously, do it as a joke, and then just finally committing and like doing it. I was talking with another friend. They're like, well, if it doesn't get on the calendar, it doesn't happen. I was like, I can empathize with that. Like, if it doesn't get on my calendar, it doesn't happen. Yeah. Like, let's just put it down and let's move forward and do it.
That's it. Yeah, that's a big thing, especially whenever I'm trying to get things done that involve other people. A big thing is like, because you get that conversation, and I forget who. Somebody recently talked about it. It was like a big marketer guy or whatever, and was explaining like there's such a dopamine rush in the thing when everyone goes, oh yeah, let's all hang out next weekend or whatever. And there's like everyone feels good about that we all said, yeah, let's do that, whatever. But there was no one ever said anything in place, and no one ever like said this time at here, we're going to do this thing. Yep. And so what happens is that day comes around, and it's like you already got the dopamine from like your mind thinking, you know, we said, yeah, we're going to hang out. Your mind just got all that. So then it comes up, and then you're like, oh shit, I actually have to go do this thing, or I made plans with this person in the meantime. I totally forgot, whatever. And a big thing is like just putting it on the calendar of like, oh, so we're going to hang out at what day? Oh, Saturday at this time. We're at so-and-so's house, and then we'll go to the bar after, whatever it is. And like, sure, maybe a little cringe to like fucking write it down like the exact time, but it's like, no, Saturday afternoon, I'm coming over to so-and-so's house, and we're going to go from there. Yeah. And like without that, what ends up happening is plans fall through.
Exactly.
People flake, and or you push off a thing you've been wanting to do forever. And that's something that I've been trying to address myself, where it's like, if I don't put it on, I've got a big whiteboard over there, and if I don't put it on there, it's the same thing. It's not going to happen. At least if it's on there, if I don't do it this week, I'm going to feel really bad not wiping it off like I wiped everything else off, and it's staying there for next week.
Yep.
Like, I got to do it. So that's one way of looking at things. But
yeah, I think it comes down to like prioritizing too, those things that you value. So
yeah.
like even just like time with family and stuff like that, I put that on the calendar. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going over to my mom's house at this time, this day. Like, I'm gonna call her because she's gonna be the first person to be like, oh yeah, that's right, we're doing it. I'm gonna call you because we're going to do this thing. Or do you ever send your friends like calendar requests?
Oh no, I don't.
Do you like send them an invite to the calendar event?
I should do that. I don't do that.
Totally. Game changer. Because then it's like,
yeah.
there's like a new level of accountability then.
Yeah.
Because like it's, it's on their calendar, or that they didn't accept it. You can just be like, hey, did you like, I put the thing there. Did you like get it?
Yeah.
You'd be like,
no, that's a good way. Yeah, a good way to think about it. Because then they get a notification too. That day they get the notification.
Yeah.
Hey, today at 6:00 you're meeting with Evan at wherever.
Exactly. Right. And
Yeah.
so like if they're like going through and scheduling things and they use their calendar, hopefully they are,
Mm-hmm.
they'll also see that time blocked.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Something that I would have to do, because I try to keep up with people's birthdays, especially people that are close with me. I'm not naturally somebody that like just remembers those things. So
I'm
like
so bad at that.
since like high school, I've like every year in like my agenda just like gone in and like go through like the people that I always say happy birthday to or always say happy birthday to me, and I just like go through and like write all their birthdays out. So it's like, okay, and I check my agenda or my checklist every week, every day. So it's like, oh, I know it's so and so's birthday.
Yeah.
In 2 days from now, I'm gonna text them when
That's a good idea.
Because it's like, it's such a kind thing too. Like I feel like to just say happy birthday to people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so little effort to just like 20 minutes go through and your like 10, 15 best friend, whoever you're closest with, write in their birthdays on the calendar.
Yeah.
And then you don't forget, and it's not that you forget, but you don't want to be the person to text them at like 9:00 because you're like, shit, and you saw everyone else post it.
Right.
Like,
on Facebook.
You're like, fuck, dude, I didn't say happy birthday to John. What's he going to think? Yeah, and that's kind of.
I've always wanted to be that person. I just never have. Like, I had started every once in a while, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do everybody's birthdays. I'm just gonna do the birthdays.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, that was a lot of birthdays. Like,
you gotta trim the list. I did everybody.
Yeah.
For like 2 years, and it was stressful.
Yeah.
Because it's like every other day. There's too many fucking people.
That's a lot of birthdays.
There's only 365 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, way too much shit going on.
I mean, I guess Facebook's making it easier. Maybe I should just like use their generic thing, but I don't think that I would feel good about that.
No, yeah, it's not for the people I'm like cool with. For random people or like people
Happy
I'm
birthday.
acquaintances with, people that I'm like okay with, you can just say happy birthday. That's
Yeah.
fine. But if it's like it's one of the homies, you gotta just at least a 2-sentence little thing.
Maybe even a gift.
Maybe a gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm too broke for gifts right now. But
I meant like GIF.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a gift.
Yeah, I'm
not
like,
a gift. I was thinking I had to buy a gift.
I don't get presents usually.
Oh, that's fair. Well, Ivan, I appreciate you being here, man. We're at over an hour. Is there anything we didn't get to that you need to get off your chest, that we need to let the people at dtalks know, or you need to let me know? You got any questions for me?
No, I don't think I do. I mean, if you want to come hang out with me on Instagram, Wisco Apothecary, that's where I do my cocktailing stuff.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Be sure to tag everything after this episode and that.
Dope.
I appreciate you. Like I said, I appreciate you being here. I thank everybody that tuned in live. I want to say thank you too quickly to our patrons for supporting the channel. If you guys are interested in getting access to exclusive podcasts, behind the scenes videos, as well as extra footage from a lot of our vlogs, and an entire new series of where I break down every single one of my songs, how I wrote them, how I mixed and mastered them, you can go over to patreon.com/Darren Rita and support the channel for as little as $1. And I also want to say a quick shout out to Kenosha Auto Insurance for sponsoring this episode. And this has been the 150th episode of the dtalks podcast. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.